Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Conversations from Stritch. My name is Dave Livingston, president of Lewis University, and I'm here with Dr. Christopher Sent, our provost, as usual for another episode of Conversations from Stritch. We're very excited about our topic today. We're going to be talking about policing and criminal and social justice. But before we get to that, I just had a few things that I wanted to mention. First of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about all that's been going on, in the last couple weeks in our country. The shootings just in the past couple days in Boulder, the shootings in Atlanta, and tie it all together with we had a prayer service yesterday for all those who died from COVID. And I guess I just wanted people to be aware of the ability, just like you can watch this show, it's, you can watch it on YouTube. You can watch the prayer service on YouTube. That was an opportunity for our community to remember in a ritual way all the people who have died during COVID. But I want to tie that into remembering the people that died in Boulder, the people that died in Atlanta, and of course, all the violence that occurs across the country, and especially remembering the violence that occurs, out of kind of crimes of hatred and anger. And I want to tie that. We will not be having a show next week. We'll remind you of that at the end. But we're in the middle of the Easter season. And in the Christian tradition, the time that we're in right now, this Lenten time, is a time for us to remember the crucifixion of Jesus, which is an incredibly painful death. And we live in that moment as Christians. That is, we partake in that, we remember it, and then we also have hope on the end of it. So Easter is a moment in which we celebrate, we're a resurrection people, that we have to live in the death, in the sorrow. We have to be with those people who are experiencing the loss of someone that they deeply love. And God is with us, and we celebrate the love that is present in our midst, even in spite of the pain that we're experiencing. So all of that is stuff that we have been thinking about, ritualizing, remembering in the last week. And I want to turn it over because there's both that remembrance and the hope in the COVID questions. And so, Chris, you're going to give us a little more update on COVID, and I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you. And that's right. So welcome, everyone. Great to be here with you. And I do have a few things to say about COVID and some other news from around campus. I guess the first thing I want to say is that while the COVID-19 vaccinations are becoming more and more available, it's very exciting. Our state and region is still experiencing COVID-19 cases, in fact, a slight increase recently. And so our battle against COVID-19 is not over yet. We must persevere in our mitigation efforts. So we encourage our employees who are now eligible to get the vaccine when it becomes available locally, and I'll say more about that in a minute, as well as to continue to live the flyer's promise even if you have been vaccinated. So a few comments about vaccinations specifically. So we found out last week that the higher education staff are now eligible to receive a COVID-19 vaccine in the state of Illinois. Not all sites not all sites have made vaccines available for higher education yet, but they will be soon. So we have listed a website here in front of us, and I'll list this in my email coming out later today, a way through the state to find vaccination sites. I made an appointment yesterday, by the way, and it took a long time. Someone made the analogy to buying really hard to get concert tickets, and it did feel a little bit like that. But it's so great that employees of higher education can now get that access, and we know through local municipalities, counties, state, and there's so many different, and pharmacies and so on, there's so many different opportunities that it might be frustrating, but please persevere and it will work out. So that's all great. For students who are watching, anyone 16 and older who has not been included already in one of the eligibility groups, students will become, or all citizens will become eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine on Monday, April 12th. And we'll continue to communicate how to go about registering. As always, visit the CDC website for the most comprehensive information about vaccines. It includes frequently asked questions as well as advice on what to do when vaccinated. And this has just recently been updated, and I'm sure will continue to be updated over the next few weeks. There's no need to report the side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine to the Lewis U app or the hotline team. Keep your vaccine, and then finally, my last comment about vaccines is remember to keep your vaccination card or other evidence that you received the vaccine. It is a medical record and should be kept in a secure place for future reference in the coming months. So the last thing I want to say about COVID is that, this is great that we're focusing on vaccinations. We're very excited about moving forward, and we're still committed to maintaining our prevention efforts on and off campus. All of our policies and protocols remain in place for the foreseeable future, and we continue through the rest of the semester probably with most of those in place. We've installed, mostly from feedback from students on campus who are interested, our student leadership on campus who want to make sure that there are face coverings available if for some reason someone has come without, forgotten them or come without them to campus. We now have dispensers across campus, so you'll see those the next time you're on campus. And please, if you've forgotten or misplaced your face covering, you can easily access one of those disposable ones. Yes,
so
question?
Just one quick comment, because I do want to just mention for people, like you said, you spent the day looking around trying to find, I got both an email and a text yesterday from Will County Public Health because I had signed up weeks ago to be on the list. They didn't text me about being in higher ed, but just about being somebody over 16. So I do want to also say to people that, if you're a student or if you have a family member who's 40 but doesn't work in higher ed and is not a frontline worker, they can still sign up with Will County Public Health,
right,
and they will get notified before the 12th, and then they can get in the queue for the 12th,
right,
13th, 14th. So just I probably signed up for that probably when you said it on air a month ago, and now I'm being communicated with. So just another FYI for our students and their families.
Great. And then I'm just going to go on and say a couple other pieces of news around campus, and the first one has to do with COVID. Our nursing students, we featured this a few weeks ago, but our nursing students continue to help with various health departments with COVID-19 vaccine distribution. On last Sunday, 14 students and 3 faculty members assisted the Kendall County Health Department with vaccine distribution at Oswego High School. The mass vaccination site was able to dispense vaccines to about 2,200 people on that day. So very exciting for our students. This was the second time our students had been to that site at Kendall County, and they plan to return in April. Closer to home, March 16th, our students assisted at a clinic for employees of, is it Magid Glove and Safety Manufacturing Company here in Romeoville, and so that was really exciting as well. Yesterday, in honor of Women's History Month, Lewis partnered with the Joliet Region Chamber of Commerce and Industry in hosting a virtual open forum with women educators and leaders from our community. Forum included contributions from our very own Professor Karen Trimble-Alium, Director of Women's Studies, and Dr. Christy Kelly, Vice President for Diversity, as well as some other great distinguished members of our local community. So we're so glad that we could participate in that. And then finally, President Livingston mentioned we'll be off next week. One more event before the next time we're with you. A reminder that Dr. Jerry Kavoris, the chair of our biology department, will present on April 7th at 6 p.m. at a national event sponsored by our North American network of Lasallian institutions. The panel discussion that Jerry will be a part of is entitled Justice in the World and the Lasallian Mission Today. So I'm excited to share that information, and we'll be able to register for that event coming up. And I'll turn it to you.
Yeah,
to
that's great.
speak a
And
little
you
bit
know,
about
just
athletics.
I was on the phone with. I think we can't say often enough to our whole community how fortunate we are to be a part of a Lasallian network, not only of Lasallian universities in the United States. The 6 of us was on the phone with those presidents yesterday. Our region also includes Africa. So I was on the phone or Zoom call yesterday with the president of Addis Ababa, which is the newest university in Ethiopia, and the president of Bethlehem University. We're grateful to Dr. Kravoris for being a part of this panel, but I just think for everybody to just be reminded constantly that this Lasallian network is, 64 universities around the globe, 6 of us in the United States, and we're very grateful. And I'm grateful to our faculty and Chris, you and Christy Kelly. Dr. Kelly has been involved. But Lewis plays a big role in supporting that global network. So moving to athletics, some athletic news very quickly, and then we'll move to our topic of the day. Congratulations to our women's golf team. They finished 8th at the 18-team University of Findlay Spring Invite, held on Monday and Tuesday at the University Club of Kentucky in Lexington. Congratulations to our men's bowling team. They placed 12th at the Leatherneck Classic Big River Bowl. That was out of 32 teams, so a really impressive finish. And then, of course, heading into this weekend, we have contests in baseball and soccer, bowling, lacrosse, softball, and volleyball. And a couple things on the volleyball side. So it's senior week for our seniors in both our men's and women's teams. Our women's team is ranked number 1. They remain undefeated. Really hopeful that they could end up having a completely undefeated season, which would be awesome. They will have their senior night on Saturday. And then our 5th-ranked men's volleyball team is playing against Quincy this weekend. They'll be playing Friday night and Saturday. I actually believe Friday night might be at Quincy and Saturday here, but I'm not 100% sure of that. Anyway, no fans still for those events, but please watch them online. I just want to, as we often say, so grateful for all of our employees, but our trainers, our coaches, our athletic administration has worked so hard to pull off a season in which we have taken all of our fall sports and moved them into the spring season, and that's been very challenging for everybody, but really excited about the opportunities it presents for our students. So now, turning over to you for the focus of our show this week.
Great. As President Livingston said earlier, the focus of the show today is on policing, criminal justice, and related topics, and we have 2 guests. So as is our custom, we'll bring one on at a time, and then we'll all stay together and talk and field questions from the audience as well. So always a reminder that you can email us at ask@lewisu.edu if you have questions during the course of the show. So our first guest is our Lewis University Police Chief, Mike Zegadlo. Before working in law enforcement, Mike was the director of campus life here at Lewis, and then later became an assistant dean of students at North Central College. And then after working as a municipal police officer in Naperville, Mike returned to Lewis in 2011 to help with the foundation of the Lewis University Police Department, which will celebrate its 10th anniversary on April 4th. So we're very happy to welcome Chief Zagodlo. Welcome. It's your second time on the show, so you're becoming a regular.
Thanks for having me back.
Thanks for joining us, Mike.
So I just mentioned the foundation of the department. So people may be asking, what was it like before, and what is unique about having a police department on a university campus?
Sure. So prior to 2011, there was simply a security department in place, and in Illinois, there's a statute called the Illinois Private College Campus Police Act, which allows for private colleges and universities, by way of a resolution from their board of trustees, to commission police departments. So in November of 2011, our board of trustees passed one of those resolutions, and LUPD came into existence in early 2011. And, the importance of having a police department as opposed to a security department or some sort of contract public safety infrastructure is that it permits us to have a really robust, well-trained competent, certified, experienced public safety infrastructure in place that really allows us to reach out into the community, do a lot more proactive community education, crime prevention programming. We have a much more wide array of response capabilities as opposed to a security department. We have the ability to interface with other agencies, outside agencies like our great collaborators, the Romeoville Police. I can't say enough about Chief Kroll and his team. We have interagency agreements with the Illinois State Police and Will County Emergency Management. We have the ability to get law enforcement sensitive intelligence, both through federal partners, the FBI and the Illinois State Police. We have access to criminal justice information. We can run criminal history checks as part of our investigations and that kind of thing. So it really just allows for a much bigger toolbox in terms of providing public safety service to the community and having a police department.
That's great. So, you mentioned this. I don't. Could you just talk, Mike, a little bit about maybe one or two ways in which what you just mentioned, because I knew this was happening. You said, you get kind of updates or information from other agencies. So I know, for instance, in the last 12 months, there have been events in this country that have led, whether it's the FBI or, state police, to up the concern over what could happen. How does that work? Can you talk a little bit about, do you get on a Zoom call? Do you get on a phone call? Is it with the state police? Is it with the federal, policing agencies?
Sure. Yeah. If I use the unrest at the Capitol as an example of that, in the days leading up to that and the several weeks after, there was a lot of intelligence to be analyzed and to be shared. So that comes by way of partnerships. We have an FBI liaison officer. We have a connection to STIC, which is our Illinois Counterterrorism Intelligence Center, and we get it's everything from an email bulletin to we do Zoom calls and WebEx calls over secured lines where the director of the Illinois State Police will facilitate a conversation for all the police leaders in the state of Illinois, and he'll bring them in and he'll present the latest intelligence and then the recommendations that go along with that. So it allows us to kind of monitor the pulse of what's going on, especially when we have these developing events. And similarly, in terms of the pandemic, we were doing the same thing with the Will County Health Department and Will County Emergency Management Agency, because these things are fluid and dynamic and kind of develop so quickly. Not staying on top of the intelligence can be really challenging. So we're lucky enough to be tied into all those channels and be able to participate in real time with those discussions and be tied in with our state and local partners.
Interesting how our fact that we have a police department allows us to have access to that information, and it is a mark of similarity we have to local municipalities. And in some ways, our universities, as we know from the news, are particularly sensitive to some of the topics that come that Mike's talking about. Mike, I wonder if you could maybe talk about the other end of that coin, from your experience. Well, from your knowledge of the work, but also from your experience in Naperville, what are some of the differences between a campus police force and a municipal police force?
It's really two different worlds of policing, and that's the way it should be. In municipal policing, it's more transactional, and when I talk with new employees about kind of what our ethos, what our philosophy is in approach to public safety here, we focus on being participants in this developmental journey of students. So when we run into a student who's in crisis, they're violating a university policy or a state statute or a local ordinance, in municipal policing, the mission at that point is to develop probable cause to make an arrest to prosecute a crime. In campus policing, when we run into a student in crisis, the mission is to try to do a diagnosis of what's caused this student to be out of line with our behavioral expectations of the community. And what type of intervention can we engineer right now in real time to help get that student back on a track of academic and personal success? So the whole orientation is different. Now there's a caveat that goes over all of that. Of course, if there's a threat to public safety involved in the behavior, then it's much more, the intervention is less about student development, more about mitigating a public safety threat. But the vast majority of our interactions with community members don't involve threats to public safety. So we work with our personnel to try to train them about access to resources and connections with student conduct and our student services partners and the counseling center and all of the resources, academic support, financial aid, all of the resources that could help a student who's kind of deviated off track to get them back on track. So it's really, I like to think of it as the approach being intervention based as opposed to enforcement based.
So you've written about that, right, Mike? Could you talk a little bit about that kind of theoretical difference or practical difference, or I guess it's both?
Yeah, the entire police industry is really struggling with the concept of reform lately. And, there are a lot of really good police leaders. There are a lot of good organizations like the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police that are pro-reform, and they want to push policing into the 21st century and modernize and to fix the things that are broken. And the article to which you're referring is one I wrote for the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police, where I offered private small college campus police departments as an example for municipal police to look at in terms of how we do things a little bit differently, how we approach our relationships with our community differently, and our orientation towards community policing being based on a formula of relationship building that kind of starts as early as orientation or even when students come to visit for a campus visit day. We want our community members to be interacting with police outside of enforcement experiences from the very beginning so that we can begin to build trust and begin to build a relationship. And that's what really fosters a community policing environment, having a trusting relationship with your department. And you can't do that if the only time you interact with people is when you're pulling them over on a traffic stop or writing them a parking ticket. There's got to be community education. There's got to be outreach. There's got to be relationship building as part of the background of that relationship. And I kind of challenged municipal departments to be open to that. And part of that article involved the concept of wearing more hats. We have to be open to doing things that aren't necessarily part of our defined mission or job description as law enforcement. During the pandemic, LUPD has rebooted hundreds of computers on campus. That's not really a law enforcement function, but when we're the only people here and folks are remoting in from home and their computer shuts down, we send a cop to reboot their computer. So, and kind of having an openness to stepping outside your position description and being able to adapt and help your community where it's needed.
That's great, Mike. Thank you so much for that summary. And I know that a lot of those issues you just brought up will probably be coming up in our conversation before we're done today. But this might be a good time to bring in our next guest, our last guest, and then we'll all talk together. So we'll say a brief goodbye to Mike, and then I know you'll wait around and be with us and maybe answer questions as a group in a moment. So I'd now like to introduce Professor Vesna Markovic, who is an associate professor and here at Lewis and chair of our Justice, Law, and Public Safety Studies department. Her research areas include suicide bombings, financing terrorism, low-tech attacks, transnational organized crime, and comparative criminal justice. She is a senior lecturer for the NATO Center of Excellence in Defense Against Terrorism in Ankara, Turkey, and has lectured worldwide on suicide bombings and terrorism. She has also served as a principal investigator on several grants and served as the director for the Institute for the Study of Violent Groups. And I think before we bring Vesna on, we have a brief snippet. She's also featured in our upcoming TED Talk event. So we have a little bit of the role from her TED Talk that we're going to show.
I knew he had a compelling story when I invited him to be a guest speaker in my honors class focused on drugs. It wasn't until he told his story in my class that I understood the struggles faced by him and so many others. Stories of survival, hope, and redemption. I was at the edge of my seat, hanging on his every word. He was the product of statutory rape, his father 29 years old, his mother only 15 years old. Both were convicted murderers. Most of those around him were involved in the drug trade. He attended high school, but he was also dealing drugs. His mother even taught him how to make crack cocaine in the microwave.
Wow. Welcome, Vesna. That's the first time I've seen that. We've
Me
seen
too.
it. So that was a really compelling piece of video. We're so much looking forward to seeing the whole thing. So welcome again. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I guess the first thing I want to say is I hope it was somewhat clear in my introduction that you're an expert in terrorism, but the department, and we know that, that the department is so complex, and we have a lot of students and a lot of different programs ranging all kinds of different topics in the subjects of criminal justice and public safety. And so we just want to maybe let you talk for a while, and I know you have a presentation prepared about some of the contours of Lewis's department before going on to discussing some of these topics. So we'll let you take it away, and I think we have a PowerPoint ready to show.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate for the president and provost for inviting me to talk about our department and to talk about some of these issues. So just a little bit information about the department for those who aren't familiar. The Justice Law and Public Safety Studies Department is located in Benilde Hall, and we have a very diverse faculty who are research-oriented and student-centered. JLPSS, we offer degree programs for over 40 years. We are the second largest program in Illinois and are ranked #1 among private institutions for criminal justice. Our small class sizes are key to personalized learning. And we have, as you can see, several majors: criminal justice, forensic criminal investigation, and paralegal studies at the undergraduate level. So the criminal justice major focuses on the current major trends in the field, concentrating on real-world issues while promoting social justice. So we do talk about a lot of the current events, such as the mass shootings that just happened in Atlanta and in Boulder, Colorado. And it's a hard time for us as well just to talk about these things, because it is really challenging when we see things like this happening. For the forensic criminal investigation, unlike programs structured to train students to become laboratory forensic scientists, our FCI program and major is a challenging degree program, and it prepares students to work as a law enforcement officer and function as an in-field crime scene investigator who collects and secures and preserves the physical evidence at crime scenes. We have a third major, paralegal studies, and it prepares students to be knowledgeable about and have expertise in the operation of the legal system, substantive laws, and legal procedures. The faculty in all three of our programs have real-world experience, having worked in either law enforcement, the court system, or other areas of criminal justice. We not only offer core courses in criminal justice, such as the Intro to Criminal Justice, but we also have other programming and other classes that I think are beneficial, particularly in today's day with all the focus on social justice. So we have classes in professionalism and ethics. We have classes that they have to take on domestic violence. We have classes like criminal and psychological profiling, intelligence gathering, social policy and social justice, and a whole host of other classes to prepare students for the field. We also offer 1-credit workshops that focus in a variety of areas, such as mental illness in the criminal mind, prison violence, sex offenders, to name a few. Besides our majors, students can also minor in other programs so they can be better prepared for the areas they want to pursue after they graduate. So some examples of this, if students are interested in pursuing a career in federal law enforcement or even private sector jobs, they can major in criminal justice and minor, for example, in cybersecurity. Or they can minor in a foreign language, one of the critical foreign languages like Russian, Chinese, or Arabic. And with all the changes in local law enforcement, there are also other avenues to pursue, such as minors in social work or psychology. So, the program itself allows for all these minors, and depending on which area the student is interested in pursuing after they graduate, there are a whole host of minors they can take as well. And the department has numerous articulation agreements with community colleges, such as our 3+1 program with the College of DuPage. We also have agreements in the works with Triton College, Wabansie, Kishwaukee, and this allows students, for example, the COD program, it can allow them to earn their associate's degree from that program and then earn their bachelor's degree from Lewis University. And there are also scholarships that serve our students well. For example, we have the Michael P. Gordon Endowed Scholarship that is offered by the Michael P. Gordon Memorial Foundation. He was a police officer who got killed in the line of duty, and so his family set up the scholarship to support students who want to get into or pursue a career in law enforcement. Next slide, please. We also have a whole area of different opportunities for students, both inside and outside the classroom. So for example, this fall, one of our professors, Dr. Jenkins, he teaches the multicultural issues in criminal justice, which is a CJ class, but it is also a gen ed class. And this year he's going to be partnering in the COIL program, and the class will be working with students from Brazil. So these are some pretty good experiences for the students inside the classroom to get exposure to different cultures and see how, police in different countries operate. JLPSS also joined the Alpha Phi Sigma National Criminal Justice Honor Society with Professor Steve Sherwin as an advisor, and our new chapter is called Pi Theta Epsilon. Our department's also offering unique experiential education opportunities, including a study abroad and work studies. Two of the popular ones, which were obviously canceled last year due to COVID, but they are slated to run next year in 2022. We have a 2-week short-term study abroad program to London, where the students get to visit different criminal justice agencies, including the Scotland Yard. And we also have a 1-week program for the FCI students at the University of Tennessee's Forensic Anthropology Center, better known as the Body Farm. There are also other opportunities for students, including our yearly career day. We have various internships that the students can partake in while they're in school, as well as chances to work with faculty on different projects. This semester, I'm working with a group of 6 students, 3 grad students, 3 undergrad students. 2 of them are from computer science, 4 from criminal justice. And it is part of the Invent to Prevent Student Challenge run by Adventure Partners in conjunction with the McCain Institute in Washington, D.C. And the students are tackling real-world problems by developing an initiative to prevent targeted violence and terrorism. The students are competing against students at schools like Johns Hopkins, Columbia University, USC, Howard, the Citadel, and 18 other universities from across the country. JLPSS is also hosting an event this coming Tuesday. It's an Arts and Ideas event that is open to not only students and faculty, staff, but also the public, Tuesday at 2 p.m. And the event is, we're bringing Mexican activist Rosie Orozco, who works with survivors of human trafficking. And she wrote a marvelous book about her work with this population of human trafficking survivors. And finally, if you can go to the next slide, please. Finally, we have a bachelor's to master's degree. So students complete both the bachelor's and master's degree in a total of 5 years. So undergrad students can apply for the grad program after completing 75 hours, and then they would start taking classes after they have 90 credit hours. And they are advised which courses to take at the graduate level, and these courses count towards both the bachelor's degree and the master's degree. Moving on to the master's programs, we have 2 specific programs, the criminal justice degree and a degree in public safety administration. The CJ program has 2 tracks, a regular criminal justice track and then a security studies track that focuses more on issues of homeland security and stuff like that. The PSA is geared more towards those who want to work in upper administration. Our graduates, it's great because our graduates have worked in many different areas, and we have over 50 alums who are now police chiefs or deputy chiefs all throughout the state. The good thing about that is we get emails from them providing us with information about job openings in the field, which we post to our Facebook page. And on the bottom of the screen, I think you can see the address there. It's www.facebook.com/LouisUJLPSS. We also post news about our alums. For example, we have a PSA Master's grad student who was appointed the first female chief of the Joliet Police Department. It is an interim position, but it's fantastic that she is the first to hold that position as a female, and she graduated recently from the PSA program. And some of the deputy chiefs that moved up are also graduates of the PSA program. She just sent us an email this week to let us know that internships have opened up in the Joliet Police Department in the fall for students. So it's a great network we've developed with our alums to benefit our current students. And these are things that are just immeasurable for the students. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about this.
Oh, you bet. Thank you so much, Vesna. It's really informative. And just in terms of that last thing you mentioned, I also find it just so inspiring to hear, through our news cycle or on social media related to Lewis, the incredible impact our graduates are making across the state in these jobs, in these leadership positions that are really part of that community that Mike was talking about and really making a difference. I have a question really probably more focused on the undergraduate programs. I'm just kind of curious about how our students come to know what they want to do. There's so many, first of all, how do they find an interest, in criminal investigations or in the range of things you talked about in criminal justice, and then as it gets refined, there's so many different job prospects, and what are they going through? If you can describe a little bit, like the decision-making process for them, that'd be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So the decision-making process, I like to call it, which is what they call it nowadays with a lot of things, is the CSI effect. So if you watch TV, every other program is related to criminal justice in some way, shape, or form. So you have the programs that focus on investigations, you have Chicago PD, Chicago Fire. And so it's just these programs that really make it interesting for students. So when we come, to these open house events, we have a lot of students that have an interest in the investigations programs or FCI. And, once they start going to the classes, they find some of the classes interesting, and it's not always a straight path. We have students coming in from different degrees that decided, I don't like this degree, and now I want to try to do this one. And I did the same thing as a student. I actually went into my undergrad wanting to go into marketing and finance, and then I took an economics class, and that was the end of that dream. And so a lot of students have that same kind of thought process. They think they want to do something, they start taking the classes, and they find out that they don't have as much of an interest in that area as they thought they did.
So Vesna, can you just give a sense, I think you've already mentioned it, but as a part of this process, because you were just talking about the kind of class side of the process, But then you also talked about the trip to London, the trip to, UT, Body Farm, and then these internship opportunities, as you talked about in Joliet. And I think we have many other relationships because we have so many people out in this field that have other internships. So can you just, for a prospective student might be watching, or a first-year student here who is undecided, because that's the largest group of our actual first-year students, when would they likely do an internship or have these opportunities? Are they more likely to do it during their first year, their second year, their third year, their senior year? When do they do that? And maybe you could talk just briefly about some of the other opportunities, kind of in addition to these things that you've already talked about. What are the other kinds of things? That goes to Chris's question. How do they narrow it? I go and work here for a semester, and then I say, I don't want to actually be a police officer. I'd rather be this other thing. How does that work for our students?
Yeah, sure. So absolutely. We have classes in all the different areas of criminal justice. So as they're going through the process, they're taking classes, they're developing ideas about what they like, what they don't like. And then the internships help in terms of getting them exposure to what the field is really like rather than what they see on TV, right? We see on TV that they're solving a case within an hour, within 2 hours, they're submitting a DNA test, it comes right back. That is not the reality of what is happening. So through these internships, they get to actually have the experience, go out and see what it's like, and that helps them develop what they should be doing. We also have, as I mentioned, the faculty are student-centered, so we do have and offer a lot of mentorship. We have people in our department who are teaching who were former law enforcement and in other areas. And so they can share their experiences and kind of help guide the students. My first question that I ask students when they come in for advising is, what do you want to do when you're done with school? What is your end goal? And then I can talk to them about getting there. And some students are very prepared from the first day of classes. They already know what they want to do, versus some students who are still kind of working through that process. And so through these experiences, when we have career day, for example, we have it usually in October and November. Last year we had it online due to COVID, but we had people coming in from Illinois State Police, from Target Loss Prevention, from the Will County Prosecutor's Office, from the FBI. And so that gives them a wide array of private sector, public sector, and then they're able to figure out kind of what appeals to them the most. And then of course the faculty there are here to guide them and to answer questions and to help them figure out the best way to achieve that.
I guess, Vesna, I want to ask one more question, and then we'll ask Mike to come in and join us. We talk a lot in this show, and we've talked about other departments, about how Lewis's curriculum and practice in the classroom is hands-on and relevant. So you've talked a lot about the kind of hands-on knowledge of how it really works in the field. I wonder if you could talk a little bit. This seems like the programs in this department are really important, that you have to stay on top of what's going on in the field, like the new techniques in investigation. Your field of terrorism seems to be evolving really rapidly. And then the other, the police reform that we'll probably talk more about with Mike are just some examples. But how do the faculty stay connected to what's going on, and how does that get translated into the curriculum?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, our faculty are really focused on doing research. So we have faculty that are doing research in a wide variety of areas. I, for example, am lecturing all the time to different police agencies, not just in Illinois, but throughout the world. So I work with terrorism liaison officers and do presentations on the threat of drones in terrorism, and focus on low-tech attacks such as vehicle ramming attacks and mass shootings. And so the research that I do it helps keep me current as to what is going on in the field. And then that translates into the classroom by being able to use, current research in the field. And the great thing about it is when the officers have this, if they become police officers and they have this background of critical thinking and they know how to use and look at scientific research, they can stay on top of things. And just to kind of tie it into what's going on today, there's a really great article by two of my former colleagues, Dr. Buffard and Dr. Armstrong, who wrote an article called 5 Reasons Police Officers Should Have College Degrees. And it talks about, how they're less likely to use violence. They're more problem solving oriented. It enables officers to have a better relationship with the community. It helps officers identify best practices. So these best practices come from research, and it helps build better leaders. So these are, things that they can develop as they're going through the programs. And that is just helped and assisted by faculty who are current in the field in terms of the latest research and be able to talk about and have these hard conversations.
Thank you so
Perfect
much.
segue.
Yeah, so let's bring one of those people back on, Mike. Chief Zagodlo, we'd love to have you come back on with us. Welcome back. We won't ask you about your college degree, which we know you have from Lewis, but we don't have time for that. I guess we don't have a ton of time left in the hour, so I just want to maybe get to the most question that we hear the most about, which is this question of defunding the police that's been, or that catchphrase that we've all heard a lot this year. I wonder if each of you could just kind of reflect a little bit about what that really means and how the ideas that each of you have talked about kind of relates to the ongoing national conversation that we're having right now. And maybe Chief Zegadlo, you can go first since you've been away from us a bit.
Sure. And talking to the two people responsible for approving my budget, I'll be very cautious in choosing my words about defunding the police department. I think that the defund the police movement, like many police reform movements, has its genesis in good intentions, but because of the language that's chosen or the way that it kind of organically grows, it turns into something that becomes negative. So at the crux of the defund the police concept is that funding should be taken from law enforcement agencies and put into community programs that will help support local communities in ways that would reduce crime. I believe strongly in the second half of the equation. So I think we need to do better in the areas of mental health. I think we need to do better in the areas of homelessness and drug addiction and taking care of many of the sources of crime on the street. I don't agree that funding necessarily ought to come from a police department in a particular municipality. Most police departments are struggling to manage the resources they have to accomplish their goals. So it sounds like I'm preaching we just need more money, but that is kind of the answer. We do need to support the destination that the defund the police funding is headed toward, but I don't think it should come from necessarily the law enforcement agencies that are out there every day struggling to stay ahead of the crime in their communities. We're fortunate here at Lewis where we don't have a lot of crime on campus, so much of the work and the resources that are expended through our department go into proactive community building programming, as opposed to buying MRAVs and armored cars and stuff.
Thank you. Vesna?
Yeah, so I absolutely agree. The defund the police was specifically meant to talk about redistributing funds towards these, what we would call essential services, social services, that are also underfunded, like housing, education, employment, mental health. But the problem is some people are calling for an abolishment or dismantling of the police, and that also becomes a problem if you kind of think about the crime and the way it is. I live in the city of Chicago, and I'll just share this really quickly. Last week, I was grading discussion boards in my makeshift office at home, and I hear, I'm on a main artery, so I hear cars zooming by all the time. I hear ambulances, police cars. And I just hear two cars zoom by, and then I hear screeching tires, and then I hear 4 or 5 gunshots. And obviously, I got away from the windows, but the first thing I did was call 911 because I'm not equipped as a citizen to go out there and take care of that type of a problem. I listen to the police scanners a lot because I do hear the sirens all the time. And unfortunately, like in the last 2 weeks, I just hear all these sirens. And a lot of the calls that the police get in my area, in my district in Chicago, are mental health related. And so they'll say, yesterday there was a call, a guy called on his roommate because he said the roommate was drinking for a week's time. He was urinating on himself, and then he was just causing all kinds of problem and very disgruntled, and he couldn't do anything about him. So they called the police. And so these are challenging things that, even as a PhD, I'm not a PhD in psychology, so I wouldn't know necessarily how to deal with this type of an issue. So there are a lot of challenges when it comes to 21st century policing.
Just ask for the two of you, just to extend it feels like, trying to pull this together, because we are going to run out of time and we probably want to ask other questions, but it feels to me like, what you said earlier, Mike, and then what you kind of rephrased in terms of the defunding, in terms of your article and your kind of call for metropolitan policing to have more of this holistic approach. And then, Vesna, what you're talking about in terms of these broader social services that, again, you or many police officers, they don't have a PhD in psychology, but they can, your reference to this article you mentioned, that police officers should have a degree, because by having a degree, they at least have some of those skills and they can approach it. And it feels like both of you are, in some sense, saying the same thing, and then it wraps around to the degree programs we actually have here. And of course, now I'm selling what we sell, which is education. But it feels like both of you are saying, the more holistically educated the police force is, the safer the society is. So I don't know if either one of you want to comment on that, but it just seems like that's the crux of everything you've said, and that our students are getting that kind of an education. It's a critical thinking, broad education that prepares them to keep the public safe in a very complicated and sometimes very dangerous world.
Yeah, and absolutely. Like the research had said was, they focused on several different things, but to get a degree, they say that they're 40% more less likely to use force, and they're 30% less likely to fire weapons in the line of duty. And this is research that was done on, a study of officer-involved shooting. So, the degree can enhance some of these skills, critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, where, you don't necessarily need to resort to something like we saw in Minnesota, where, the officer was clearly in the wrong by putting his knee in the neck of somebody who counterfeit a $20 bill. This is completely, just completely terrible to see. They should not be doing that. And so, having the degree can help them kind of think these problems through. And I'll let the chief talk so we have some time for questions and answers.
Yeah, modern policing in the 21st century it's not a physical game, it's a mental acuity challenge. It's a thinking person's game. It's about problem solving, it's about communication, it's about de-escalation. And the most successful police officers I've encountered in my career are the ones that are cognitively, mentally, and emotionally prepared for those challenges. And Vesna is absolutely right. If you've got a stupid police officer who doesn't know how to manage his emotions and problem solve, he or she's going to be unsuccessful on the street and is likely to end up hurting someone. So if you have an intelligent person who's a good problem solver and can control language and manage their kind of emotional IQ, that's going to result in a safe community and a successful police officer.
So unfortunately, we have to wrap this up. We could probably go on for another hour, which is why we have degrees in this, so you can spend 4 years, studying and talking about this stuff. I just want to say how grateful I am for both of you joining us for the show today. Thank you, Dr. Sint, for being on here. We're really grateful for what you do for our community, Chief Zagodlo. And Dr. Markovic, we're so grateful for your leadership in what is an incredibly important field of study for our society and very important at Lewis University, one of our largest departments. So thank you both for joining us. To all of you watching, I did want to say we're gonna phase out with a little bit a flyer on the TED conference that's coming, but I did want to say again that we will not be on next week because it's Holy Thursday, and we don't have classes next week, so we will be on the following week. We're excited the following week to have a little bit of, we'll be previewing the celebration of scholarship at that meeting or show, because the celebration of scholarship will be the following week, and that's really one of our high points of the academic year. But we want to wish everybody that celebrates Easter, that they have a wonderful Easter. For our students, faculty, and staff, with a couple days off, I hope you're able to spend time with your family and friends. Again, please stay safe and stay healthy. We wish you a really wonderful week and a wonderful Easter, and many blessings to you and your families.